Well, earlier this week, we did kind of a retrospective. We took a little nostalgic journey down memory lane in comparing my former home at the Fairy Tale House with this home, the Storybook Cottage. And yes, they have those monikers. It kind of helps me differentiate the two, but it's also very descriptive, I think, of their architectural styles and the styles of the garden. So I thought we would do the same thing here. I will compare and contrast how this yard feels to me compared to my former front yard, the differences, maybe what I like better, what I like worse. But in the process, we will do a little trip down memory lane. And if you are new to this channel, you'll be able to see some images from my former home, and you too can compare and contrast the different styles and some of the different types of plantings that I've got there and these less mature plantings here. So what do you say, Stuart?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Well, probably the biggest difference between my former home and this one in the front yard is the amount of shade I had. So at the other house, I had a nearly 100-year-old Shumarty oak that I both loved, but also really stressed over. It suffered lots of ice damage, lots of wind damage over the years. And one of the reasons I wanted to move was because I didn't want that tree to go down on my watch. I would have been absolutely devastated. It was, interestingly, one of the reasons we moved into that house and one of the reasons I decided to move away from that house and to the cottage. So back to the quality of shade. So there I had pretty dense shade for a good amount of the year. Here, obviously, this has a lot more sun. They both faced south, but this one, because of the lack of mature trees, it has a lot more sun and less shade. And do I miss that? Yes, I miss it when I am working in the garden. When I am inside, I don't miss it because it's so much brighter. Because as fabulous as that tree was, Stuart is nodding his head, it made the inside, the dining room, the living room, pretty dark inside, especially with that dark mahogany woodwork. So it's, you know, it's a give and take. Everything has a silver lining, but then everything also has its drawbacks. Now, one thing that I loved about the former house was the way that the redbud trees grew up into kind of a grove that turned into a grown together ceiling overhead. And I did that with just native eastern redbuds, and these are they. So I have planted 3 of them. They are already growing very rapidly, and I anticipate that before long up here I will have considerably more shade. I can already tell a difference this June versus last June because they are so much larger in scale, and I can also tell a difference because this entire wall, gorgeous wall of white wedding hydrangeas is not only more mature, but is much happier in the increased shade. And they will only grow, even though they can grow in full sun, they will be that much happier after they get a little bit more dappled shade from these redbuds as they continue to mature. The holly hedge here definitely gives not only privacy to me and my neighbor from each other's front yards, but it also serves as a nice windbreak, and it also provides some shade from the late afternoon hottest sun on the west side that comes in and sears this. Now, some of you will tell me, Linda, you need to put water in your bird bath, and yes, I will, but today we are cleaning it out before I fill it with fresh water. So I think this stand of white wedding looks fabulous here. It will continue to look more fabulous as it gets more shade. They're maturing nicely. They can handle full sun, but when it gets between 95 and 105, do they show signs of distress? Absolutely, as do I. So that's probably the biggest difference, is the amount of shade and the ability I have to grow things that are either shade lovers or sun lovers. So let's go over to the other side and I'll share a couple more things. something kind of unexpected, to me anyway. Maybe if I had really thought through it, it wouldn't have been such a surprise, but is how much more public this corner lot is from my other middle of the street lot in Crown Heights. Because now I not only have exposure on the south side, but I have broad exposure also on the east side, and people can drive the periphery, and since it is elevated, they can kind of see what's going on, yet I do have a degree of privacy because of that elevation. So one of the things that I love is I have the ability to have more hydrangeas here. And I love the white ones. I love the Bank of White Weddings, but I might love this even more. This is the Bank of Moondance hydrangeas. They are a hydrangea that reblooms, and then in the front are all of these white encore azaleas, which should be blooming this fall and probably will start sputtering out with some blooms here this summer. So I love the way they look. I love, these were existing, these arborvitae, and I think that they make a brilliant backdrop for this. So what's interesting to me and different from the other house is just how much more traffic there is. There's much more traffic from touristy kind of traffic, from people from out of state coming from downtown and visiting the sites downtown. There's more neighborhood traffic, partly because there's sidewalks, a lot more people come by. And I have to say, it's one of the motivations that I moved here, because I really wanted more of that urban feel. I wanted a little bit more of a younger neighborhood with more kids, and I wanted a more walkable neighborhood. And this is definitely that. So I think that's probably another distinction. Do I miss my old neighborhood? Yes, but more because of the people in it. I certainly miss my own garden, but I have been, I don't know, I guess I've just been as captivated by this one, so I haven't missed it as much. But it's also important to say that I haven't gone back and looked at a lot of old photos recently. And let's take a little break here, because I really want Stuart to show you some progression of when these were installed, how quickly they have grown, how beautifully they have grown, and then maybe also, if we've got some, make some comparisons in the hydrangea stand at the old house, where I did, now that I think about it, I really, really miss my mammoth oak leaf hydrangeas. Yeah, my mammoth oak leaf hydrangeas. So I'll let him plug in a bunch of content right here for you guys to enjoy, especially those of you who maybe aren't familiar with the former house. A lot of people, and you might want to go back and watch some of the old videos. Yeah, make some playlists. So let's take a break here, and I'll meet you back out front. Well, definitely, probably the biggest difference and the most commented on difference between this yard and my other yard is that there is so much more color. And I have to say, kind of surprisingly to me, I really love that because the color is nonstop, even through the hottest months of summer. And before, that was impossible for me to achieve because of the changing shade patterns. It was really difficult. And here that's not a problem because the sun and shade is far more consistent throughout the duration of the growing season. So because of that, I have a lot more pleasant deadheading to do, and I do find it pleasant. I love coming out here, especially in the early morning and in the evening, and deadheading like this candy butterfly. This is little lavender, this is little grape. Let me introduce you. And I find it really pleasant work. And the thing is, this is stuff that I like to do to make it look consistently fresh. But do I really have to do it? Not necessarily, because most of these things that are planted, they will continue to put out blooms whether I do lots of deadheading or not. But because I enjoy it, and because I know I will get that much more abundant bloom by doing this kind of deadheading, that I do it because I like to be out here with the pollinators, with the neighbors, and with the guests who walk by. Probably the most frequently asked question I get, and especially now because it's been just a year and a half since we moved from the old house, and that is, are Sydney and I still friends? Will I ever go over and see Sydney and Tommy's garden? Will they come here? And I think the answer to that is yes, we are still friends. Jamie actually runs into them more than I because he will go to some of our favorite restaurants and things in that area for pickup, and he'll run into them more than I. But I think it's still, and I think you guys will understand this, I have no problem with the changes that they have made. I think they're not my style. More importantly, they are their style, and they are very good stewards of the garden. They're very good stewards of the home, and that's what I wanted, and I wanted them to put their personal stamp on it. So I know they are doing lots of changing the looks of things, and that's fine with me. You guys comment on it a lot. You may like it better, you may not like it as well as when I had it, but the point is it's theirs. But do I want to go back and see those changes at this point in time? No, I'm still not quite ready for that. It's still a little bit raw to me, and maybe after this garden is a little bit more mature, I'll feel compelled to do that, and I apologize for the blowers and the mowers. And I'll do that, but I'm not ready to do that yet. And I think you guys can understand that. I think Sydney can understand it. I understand, so I just think it's one of those things. I'm not ready yet, and I've got more than enough here to keep me busy. So I think that's probably one of the biggest questions that I get. I do have a lot more perennials here than I had in the front yard at the other house because it was really hard to get things established in the way of a lot of perennials because of the root competition from the tree and the amount of shade. I also relied very heavily on lots of boxwood there and some azaleas and things, but a lot of those also were somewhat decimated over some of the storms that we had recently. So it gave Sydney a lot of opportunities to kind of change things around in front, and I think that's probably a good thing. Here, I love the fact that I have more color, partly because it not only attracts, I think, more pollinators, but also because it attracts more children, because they are absolutely captivated by all of the color. And I would say in general, the neighborhood and garden visitors are captivated by not only the amount of color, but the way it changes over time. So that's another reason I think there's so much increased traffic, is because walkers, they come by every single day to see what has changed. And I take that as a big responsibility. Almost, I have alluded to the fact that I almost feel a little bit like it's a park here on the corner, and it's my responsibility to keep it looking as good as I can at all times. This is, because of the amount of color, I would say this is a more fun front garden to work in, except for when it's 110 and it's full sun. But slowly over time, that is kind of changing. So Stuart, you want to maybe throw in some more pictures from the other front yard here, and we'll come back after that. Okay, another great joy of mine is tending the window box. And this is actually of a scale, it might be slightly bigger than the window box I had at the other house. But one of the reasons that this one is so successful, even as it's gotten very, very hot, is the fact that it is consistently in full sun throughout the entire growing season. So from as soon as the tulips start coming into bloom all the way through the first frost in the fall, this has the same amount of light, of course predicated on the length of the days, but the same exposure over time. So it can transition from one light condition to other light conditions as the seasons age. Because of that, it is far more symmetrical. I can get a far more equalized segment of bloom across the expanse of the window box because of that. And it also just gives me a little bit more flexibility in what I can plant here, because I don't have to accommodate things that at some points need are in shade and then later get in sun. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. The conditions are consistent. So I could not be more thrilled with the way that these bubblegum petunias look. You guys can tell me which window box you like better. Stuart, let's put a picture of the previous window box here. There's of course the iconic one with the tulips in it, but let's see if we can find some other ones at a different time of year.
Those are my favorite ones.
I know they're the favorite ones, and you show them over and over again because we're so proud of them. But let's show some from a different.
Lots of other ones
I know
too.
from a different time of year, because even though those were fabulous during tulip season,
right.
It was hard to keep them quite as fabulous for the rest of the year. I also appreciate whomever told me about vervain, a form of verbena, that you said that in your experience this vervain was beautiful, but it could be also, that's the purple stuff. Yeah, but that it could also be very, very aggressive and really take over. And so we might do well to only plant it in containers and not in the ground. And fortunately, that's what I have done, and I have resisted any urge to plant it in the beds themselves. So thank you guys, whoever mentioned that. I appreciate it. And ostensibly it comes back year after year. So we will see, and it would sure be nice if this did come back and I didn't have to replant it. As it gets hotter and hotter, these periwinkles will really come out and make more of a color contrast. I think there's an echo enough there. They're a little bit more red, but I think it still works. And the Irish Mist Euonymus from Southern Living really has done well here now that they've gotten larger. And so unexpected to me, such a happy surprise, was how wonderful the Sunshine Ligustrum is doing in here. And if this indeed overwinters in this container, I will be thrilled, because it is just, from the street, let's get a picture from the street, Stuart, it really stands out.
That and the bubble gum.
Yeah. Yeah, sunshine bubblegum. It's a good combo. So that's another difference between this house and my former home. Well, as I stand here, Stuart pointed out to me before we do the outfit of the day that this place has more symmetry as evidenced by the 2 symmetrical bows that I have flanking my lantern, or flanking the door on my lanterns. So this is just a very casual outfit, and I'm only showing it to you because I have become obsessed with these new shirts. They're wonderful.
Guys too? Is it unisex?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There's a brand called Coolabar that's absolutely wonderful. I have some of those. This is another probably off-brand. We will put a link to this one, and they do have SPF in them. Now, how that stands up over multiple washings, I'm not really sure, but even if that degrades over time, what I know is these protect my arms physically because they're long sleeved. The material is very cool and lightweight, and it not only protects my arms from the sun, and some of them even have thumb holes, but it also protects from things like here when I go through a rose patch and I get all beaten up. Yeah, and by the way, Unkers works great on that, but it also physically protects your body parts from any kind of burrs and thorns and pokes. My hat, I have to point out, is a gift from Kayla.
Very cool.
Yes, my sunglasses are Cole Haan, and I think my breeches are just some online cutoffs I got this way. I think maybe from Amazon, I can't remember. And of course, I've got a favorite pair of HiSea Boots on. So there you go. There is my outfit du jour. Take a look at these shirts that have SPF in them. I think they're going to save us. Now, I like to think that even though it's different, certainly the architecture is different and there's a lot more color, but a lot of you have said, and I hope this is a good thing, that it looks like me. And so that even though it's very different, I think it does still look like me. And I think the reasons for that are because I have repeated and reintroduced some things that are signature touches for me. And probably the biggest signature touch for me is Boxwood, and perhaps more specifically also topiary. So there is a lot of Boxwood here. There are varying kinds. I still enjoy clipping it, though I probably won't clip it as frequently. And I still love the tension between the rounded architectural forms of the Eugenia topiaries, of the Boxwood, of the ligustrum, of the arborvitae. I still love the rounded, mounded forms of that as it contrasts and compares with the things that are more blousy, more colorful, and grow in a more ebullient way, like the butterfly candy, like all of the salvia, like some of the perennials, and increasingly some of the taller annuals that are starting to come into bloom, like the zinnias, it's a perennial, but the tall phlox, and then ultimately lots of cleome. This one over here is already a big girl, but I've got lots of pink and white cleome that will also give some height over here where it was previously. And so yeah, so over in here, I've got some that are still small and growing up.
Oh, okay.
And then something different that I didn't have in my other garden, but boy, that I have loved in this one, because now I have enough consistent sunshine, is the introduction of the boxwood basil and this purple ball basil. So I have little clumps of that that will continue to grow as summer gets hotter and hotter. I also have enough light now for dahlias. Look how big they're getting in these cages. So for the dahlias, and there's one in bloom over there.
I'm trying.
Yeah, sorry, I'm so sorry, Stuart.
I'm trying so
Yeah,
I get that.
yeah, in that black cage.
With the red?
With the, yes, kind of red. But another thing that I'm continuing to do is still try to have some color echoes, so that the color of that dahlia is the perfect color mate
It does line up with it really
of
well.
the butterfly candy little raspberry, and then ultimately the pink zinnias beyond.
Yeah, it does.
So even though there's a lot of color, it's still in a relatively tight color palette in terms of white, purple, dark pink, light pink, a little bit of yellow, but just as the back is all really hot colors like reds and oranges, and now introducing some white. So I think that's a difference. Another difference is that I have different pests here than I had at the other house. I've been talking about my ongoing battle with Japanese beetles, and I really didn't have that as a problem at my other house, but boy, I've got it here, which tells me, and you guys have been so helpful in that regard, that I'm trying to battle them in the moment, but I'm also trying to prevent them down the line. And I apologize, whoever told me about applying milky spore at a very critical time. I'll be doing that when I come back from Scotland. Thank you so much. I did indeed order some, and I will be applying it. I do know that I have to get there in the appropriate time of the growth cycle. Ta-da!
Didn't fall.
Ta-da! Backwards on the stepping stones, it didn't fall. And the other difference is, boy, do I have a lot more pollinators here.
All the bees that were just around us, and I love that we can stand in the middle of them.
And they
There's
just don't bother us.
there's no worry in the world.
Yeah, they just don't bother us, and they're little butterflies now, but pretty soon the big guns will arrive, the big guys will arrive.
I need to have a talk with the mosquitoes.
Yeah, and I love it. And then I also just have more sun and more room for annuals that I adore, like lantana, like Joseph's coat, pentas, what else? Bubblegum petunias, those really, really tough annuals I've talked about before that do so well in this much sun. And another difference is, in the past, I don't think I had any kind of buddleia anywhere, much less ones that bloom as profusely as these. Look at that.
Yeah, they're really kind of.
And I have a whole bunch of them that color coordinate with the salvias, the veronicas, the scabiosa, the verbena bonariensis, and then the deeper hues of things like the penstemon and some of the purple foliage plants.
And Aaliyah.
And Aaliyah. Hi, Leah. Leah's over there
That's
working.
new in this garden, too.
Yeah, Leah. This is new, and it's our favorite thing. It's our favorite thing.
It's been very helpful.
Leah wasn't feeling well yesterday, so we're so glad she's back today. And she's gonna, if anything goes awry while I'm gone, then you can blame it on Leah, because she
Hey,
is,
look at
she is. Yeah, reach out to support, because Leah is trying to keep us honest. I am going to be doing a video on how I water, because a lot of you asked about that, and I'll be doing that. Some other things. Okay, just because we have to, let's go visit the pumpkin. As you may recall, it was devastating that the first pumpkin got shriveled up. Pumpkin down. As always, it's trash day when I do this. But looky there. Looky there. And I think we have another little tiny one right there.
That's why I kept saying watermelon, because at this point it looks a whole lot like a watermelon.
I know, I'm hoping it's not a watermelon. And then there's another baby one there. And then there's others on the ground. And I will be putting cardboard under that as soon as I get another Amazon delivery. And there are other small ones. So that's kind of fun. And I do realize that once this gets to be a big guy, I'm gonna have to put some kind of support there. I'm not sure what kind, but I will.
It'll grow slow enough to be able to figure it out.
Yeah, it'll grow slowly enough to be able to figure it out. Let me show you another change that I made, because sadly, I tried to babysit it, I tried to give it TLC, but I lost the coordinating Encore Azalea standard that was over here. And
Oh.
so since some of my better boxwood, which is another huge change, I have blight resistant boxwood now, which is a great anxiety reducer. But we took that dead azalea out and I transplanted some of the crowded boxwood in there. And ultimately it will grow up and get bigger in some kind of shape. And then for those of you that wondered, I can't remember if I ever shared this or not, wondered if I decided to turn these into a topiary or let them grow in a conical fashion, and indeed they are growing in just a standard Christmas tree. Yeah, standard Christmas tree form, because I've got enough topiary going on in other places, and that might be the final difference. Boy, these Eugenia topiaries, they are so happy here. I need to do some clipping on this one because I think it's a misconception that they do not like a lot of sun and full sun, but au contraire, they do. They really like a lot of sun. So I'm going to be feeding the color a lot before that will stop next week because we get up in the upper 90s. I'm also going to be looking for things like over here. Let me do this one last tip.
Well, it really is just color everywhere.
And here is my one last tip, and that is if you've got anything that really looks chlorotic, and by chlorotic I mean iron deficient, or some of the leaves are starting to turn yellow.
So that's what that means.
Yes, that's what that means. Like this topiary right here doesn't look as dark a green as these do, and I'm thinking it might need a jolt of iron. So I've got some liquid iron here.
Get a shot of it.
We'll put a link below, and you can use that as a foliar, or I'm doing a soil drench on this one, and I'm just giving it a feed of liquid iron according to package directions. So I hope you enjoyed that little trip down memory lane. We will try to include lots of pictures, but again, if you are new to this channel, or if you just really miss the old house, then by all means go back and look at some of the old videos. We're actually going to be revisiting some of them to see if my opinions on some of this stuff has changed, or if I have some amendments to some of the things that I may have shared with you earlier. So we'll do that a little bit later. So thank you guys, I appreciate it. Now I'm going to go pack for Scotland.